Welcome back to Beyond the Bite. I'm your host, Eddie Aldrete. In today's episode, we're going to go behind the scenes at City Hall, and you're going to meet some of the people behind the public policy decisions. And that's because we're partnering an incumbent with someone who's newly elected and stepping into public office for the very first time. Our incumbent today is Councilwoman Meza Kaur from District 1, who's bringing with her experience and the pragmatism of understanding the realities of governance. And in District 8, our newly elected City Councilwoman Meza Gonzalez, who's bringing with her her mandate, her bold ideas to see what she can accomplish in her first term. This conversation is designed to explore not just what lies ahead with budget deficit and other issues, but what ideas these two councilwomen have and how they put their plan into action. So we're going to talk about the challenges of, as Councilwoman Kaur calls it, the orange cone issue, the impact that construction by the city and what it does to small businesses in that area. We're going to be talking about the budget deficit as well as Project Marvel and a host of other issues. So I want to welcome the two of you, and thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
So, Councilwoman Kaur, I want to start with you. On when you were sworn in, during your opening comments, you called District 1 the heart or the corazón of San Antonio. So tell us what that means to you.
Yeah, so I truly believe that District 1 represents all of the unique facets that are in our city, from the old suburbs beyond 410 with Colonial Hills, Greater Harmony Hills, to our most historic neighborhoods and central business districts. So I think calling it the Corazón of San Antonio is not just because we're centrally located, but also because a lot of the issues that we are dealing with represent the issues across the city at large. So I say the person in this seat can't just focus on a singular issue or a singular neighborhood. We have to be a representative for the entire city.
So, Councilwoman Meza Gonzalez, does that make District 8 the kidney or the liver of San Antonio or the soul of San Antonio?
I would say we're the soul. Yes, absolutely. But we're also north central, I think, to San Antonio, to the north side of San Antonio. So District 8, I think, similar to District 1, is just so diverse in our culture, in the economics of District 1. We have our large employers, our small businesses, 27 parks, strong neighborhoods. Making sure we protect all of that is important to me.
So, you know, it's one of the reasons why I wanted to have the two of you on was because you just got reelected. Congratulations to the both of you, by the way. You just got elected to your second term. And you are coming into this for the first time, and you're well experienced. You were the Mayor Nirenberg's chief of staff, and so you're very familiar with city council and how it works. So what did you learn? What was new to you, or what did you discover in your term that you weren't really thinking about or you thought might be different when you were actually campaigning for the job?
So we always say that your council people are your closest elected officials to, our constituents. We're the closest form of government and the folks that people call when they have any kind of issue. I had no idea how many people would be calling us for help. That has been a big shocker. My staff over the last 2 years has handled over 5,000 constituent cases for people that have called in. I've asked her permission to share the story, but several months ago, we had a mom that had just gone through a divorce and was living with her 2 kids, and her electricity got shut off, and she came into the office crying, looking for help. So I think the biggest thing that I've learned is we are truly the first line of defense and extended customer service for the city and trying to address some of the issues that we have solutions for and can get creative for constituents. Like in that case, we were able to work with some of our nonprofits to come together to help pay off her old bill so that she can get electricity in her house for her kids. But sometimes we don't have the solution. I have over 400 requests for sidewalks in the district, and I don't have a solution for that because we don't have money set aside and there's no plan for them.
And so, you're facing a budget
deficit,
shortfall.
Yeah. Yeah.
Evilise, I guess one thing that Councilwoman Melissa Cabello Havrda shared with me on a previous episode of this podcast is it's really 24/7 because when she not only got the calls, but when she went jogging, she would get stopped. When she went to the grocery store, she would get stopped. When she went out to dinner in a restaurant, she would get stopped and asked, about a particular issue or concern. And so it seems like it's you're always on.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that completely. So that's happened a couple of times already at HEB Alon. So yes, it's true. It's just, it's part of the job. And so knowing that, going into it with that mindset, I think is important because, again, I think just like Suk said, we are that first touch, right, that folks call when they need help. And sometimes there are state issues or federal issues, and so it's connecting them to those representatives, but then what we can do and help them locally, right?
That's so true. We get all the calls regardless of whether we can do them or not.
But you'll remind them who their state rep is, you'll remind them who their senator is, and these folks can help you here and there. They might even call you back and, tell you, they haven't called me back. Okay.
So then you're a filter as well.
Oh, yeah,
because
absolutely.
they're asking you about a state legislative issue.
Yeah, absolutely.
But this 24/7 issue, just to make a quick rant, is why I hate the question of will you be a full-time council person? Because I'm like, what do you define as full-time? How many hours a week do you think we're working?
Yeah.
I'm so curious to hear what people think about that because when they look at our schedules, they're like, my staff is like, shocked about how much we have to do.
I believe this came up during the Charter Review Commission.
Yeah, I bet.
Because when they were analyzing how much work went into being a council member, because outside of council, you have constituent meetings in your office, you have committee meetings, you have town halls, you have public safety meetings with your safe officer or Chief McManus or somebody. So you're constant, and that's not including
the community meetings. That's the biggest
neighborhood association.
Not even just neighborhood, like all Saturdays, our communities, whoever's doing an event, they want us there. They want us to be able to speak. They want us to be able to show support. So that's like the majority of our Saturdays, Sundays.
And I think that this doesn't even include the reading you have to do to prepare for a council meeting or a B session or a meeting with Chief McManus because you believe crime is up and you want to know what the plan is.
Yeah. No one can read as much as Councilwoman Adriana Rocha Garcia did, though.
She set the bar I think Eric, City Manager Eric Walsh still uses her as the example with 1,000 little Post-it notes in the budget.
I was going to say. I remember her first meeting.
Well, let me ask you this. Knowing that and knowing that Councilman Courage sort of set the bar for constituent service. Evilise, what will you use as a guide or as a model for how you want to establish your term?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it is representatives like John Courage, representatives like Adriana Rocha Garcia, District 8 representatives, right? We've had a really good history in District 8 with strong representatives from Art Hall to Judge Wolf, our mayor, our previous mayor now. But I mean, that's real. And residents in District 8 have high expectations because of that, right? And so it's just making sure that we match those expectations and we're there ready to help. Services look different in District 1 than in District 8, but they're all important to each one of us. And so I think it's helpful for us to learn from each other because I know what would be important to her residents the more I talk with her and visit with her. And she'll know what's important to my residents the more she and I engage, right? So that will help us also support each other on the dais when there's a need there that I don't really see in District 8, but I'm pretty sure just based on the conversations I've had with her, that's important to residents in District 1. So I want to be supportive of what she's asking for.
So there's another model or example I want to bring up, and that is you, Suk, with Marina Aldrete Gavito and Mark White. The three of you came in together. You quickly gelled. And I think the one thing that really set that relationship apart with the three of you was none of you believed the old adage that freshmen are to be seen and not heard. I mean, you all three of you dove right into tough issues, and you wanted to make your mark on the city.
Yeah, absolutely. I always say being on the campaign trail together immediately bonds you.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
So particularly with Councilwoman Aldrete Gavito and I, we were in the runoff together. We had started campaigning together. And so it was just, even this round too, I feel like I'm already connected a little bit to the new freshmen because we were the last ones, working very hard to this last election date. And so Eva Lisa and I, we texted each other on election night, and she jokingly said, campaign shirts get to be thrown away now.
I don't want to see my campaign shirt.
And I told her I took them to the Salvation Army. So if anybody wants extra Soak Core campaign shirts. But you're exactly right. But all of that to say, I think we did work well together. But I think even the last council, we did a really good job of building relationships. And I think that's so important because you need to count to 6. Even to put a CCR in, you need to get 5 signatures. But if you look at the signatures on any CCR from the last 2 years, they're all over the place. Everyone signs everyone's. There's never a person that's like, oh, I'm not going to go ask that person for a signature. Transit-oriented development, what Mark Wright started with, and Terry and I co-signed that and co-authored that with him. So, I think there's partnerships that we built across all of the seats.
And in this particular case, signing a CCR is a commitment to bring an issue up at council. Does not mean you're going to vote for it in its final form because it could change.
Sure, but
you're saying it's worthy of a debate.
Sure, absolutely. And I always ask questions. Like if someone brings me a CCR that I'm like, I have some questions on how this would work out or how this is different from something that already exists. And so I will always ask questions. I feel like anytime you sign and put your name on something, you're essentially signing off on you think it's a good idea, even though it's not that. But it's technically it's not that. I still think it's worthy of a discussion and conversation.
Another issue that where things come up on the campaign trail, Marina Aldrete Gavito from District 7, she's a jogger. And she experienced the dangerous dog issue almost every time she went out. And so that was an issue she was not anticipating having to take the lead on, but then she did. So Eva-Lise, let me ask you, having been through the campaign, what did you hear going door to door that now makes you want to set as priorities now that you're a member of the council?
Well, I think for me, District 8, again, it starts at Callahan and I-10, so close to where we are now, and goes all the way to Ralph Fair Road on I-10, a little sliver of Ralph Fair Road. And on 1604, it's Kyle Seal Parkway to Northwest Military. It is a massive district. And again, all of these small businesses, large businesses, neighborhoods. One thing I did hear a lot of was from the neighborhoods of just kind of wanting that neighborhood feel back. A lady said, I've lived here for 20 years, and this entire row used to be full of homeowners. And now most of this street is rentals. Short-term rentals or just renters, right? And so that changes the neighborhood, the dynamic. And so even HOA presidents, I'm sure you've heard this too, they'll say, yeah, I've been a president for three terms now, and I'm trying to get someone else to fill it, but no one wants to do it. And so it's different because, my generation, the generation under me, sees neighborhoods differently. They see HOAs differently. And so how do we get that neighborhood feel back was important to a lot of residents. And what I also heard was, I would say every 5 doors, I would block walk. The conversation was, I would say, I'm born and raised here. And they would say, oh, me too. I'm born and raised here too. Okay, where are you from? I'm from the south side. I'm from the west side. What brought you here? USAA, UTSA, better schools. And they bought their first home here 40 years ago. And I mean, you're talking about residents who are born and raised in San Antonio, but moved to that side of town for economic opportunities for themselves and for their families. And so that's something that I think needs to be highlighted. It's important to me that we remember those stories, and I think those are good stories for San Antonio. And so that's something I definitely picked up on the campaign.
So I want to move to the budget. So your first term, council would often end up in a situation where you had surplus CPS money.
I had no idea how lucky we were.
And now you're looking at a budget deficit. So how does that change your focus on the budget?
Yeah, it makes it really difficult because all of these ideas that we've seen come up as challenges, it's hard to provide additional funding for, right? So you mentioned Councilman Aldrete passion for ACS and just spay and neuter dogs and dangerous dogs in general. And we tried a pilot earlier this year to help provide fencing and dog houses for our neighborhood that has one of the biggest challenges in our district, which is Delview. And we were able to have a lot of success with it. And the success, it's actually not the free fencing and the dog houses that's making the big difference, but it's getting those folks in the pipeline for ACS to better understand how they can get free spay and neuter services, to understand pet responsibility.
Absolutely.
So they paired that with door-to-door canvassing and communication with residents, and they're willing to listen because they're getting something too, right? And so that was successful, and we want to be able to replicate it, but ACS doesn't have the capacity to do that. So how can I mean, we're going to make the request for adding those additional folks to be able to do that canvassing and provide this support across different neighborhoods in the city. But where is that funding going to come from? And so I think this is going to be a very challenging summer. I know that Eric's already been asking the directors to look at where they can kind of tighten the belt, where they see some efficiencies. But I've been talking with some of the directors, and that means people. And it's like which person's job is not important, right? I was talking to ITSD, and we've been working really hard on trying to get a two-way CRM for the city that connects to 311 and our council offices so that we can talk, like we can actually communicate better with constituents.
And you just CRM is a software for customer relationship management.
Exactly. I did that in one of the debates too. But we've been trying to work on that, and but software costs so much money. And so we're kind of in a rock and a hard place now to really figure out how do we actually do some of these things that are important within a deficit. So I don't have a great answer for you right now, Eddie, but it's going to be a challenging summer.
And I would imagine that you're getting briefed regularly, or you will be moving forward on the budget before it comes up. And I know the city's already starting to schedule meetings on the budget for public input.
In our summer vacation.
So that's council doesn't meet formally in a session during July, but things still happen.
Yeah, absolutely. There's still meetings that take place. We have our first budget work session coming up. And so right before that, we'll have some budget meetings. And then through the month of July, definitely.
We usually don't actually have any by usually I mean my whole 2 years of experience, but we haven't had specific meetings in July that are formal for council. Right. But it looks like this summer we're going to.
So tell me, again, I want to go back to something that you experienced, and we had orange cone issues all over the city. But the one that got the spotlight was St. Mary's Street and Broadway, which fall in your district. And it was...
And South Alamo now.
I'm going to editorialize here and say it was atrocious. It was really bad. I remember one time going to meet you for a cup of coffee on St. Mary's.
At the Y?
No, it wasn't at the Y, or maybe we were meeting for lunch or something, but you had to park 2 blocks away and maneuver through the cones and the dirt and the dust, and it looked like you couldn't even get to the restaurant.
100%.
So where are we today? I know that the city manager has expressed an idea to make that a priority. And how do you feel about that issue today?
Yeah, right off the bat, it was the first thing that Eric and I, in our first meeting right after I got elected, I was like, we've got to do something about this. You have to help me understand why. Like and it wasn't just St. Mary's. That was the one that blew up the most in the media because the businesses there were not going to stay silent. They had seen it, experienced it. So many lost their establishments. They shut down. Aaron Pena will always tell you, like, he's got some real bad PTSD from construction on that street.
And in this particular case, especially on Broadway, I believe, you had multiple issues. You had some SAWS work being done because it takes coordination between CPS, SAWS, and the city. And then, you've had the stuff would have to stop because of the Final Four. And
so that's actually always the case. It's never just, if it was just a city sewage line that needed to be addressed, there would be no reason why a project would take longer than expected time. It's always coordination with the different entities. Yeah. And so you have 3 different entities doing the work, paying for the work, and actually trying to figure out where their stuff is. And what we learned is that, specifically around St. Mary's Street, they had no idea where the water line was. Right. Same thing that happened at South Alamo. This was in October of my first year in 2023. They were going to close down the intersection at Cesar Chavez and Alamo, the busiest time of year over there, right? Think about the UTSA games, the volley, all the festivals. They were going to shut it down. The businesses were up in arms because they told them 2 weeks ahead of time. And they started digging, and we tried to figure out solutions for the businesses, but they started digging and they realized the line wasn't where they thought it was going to be, so they could actually open up the intersection. And so that's why we passed my big first policy was to push on subsurface utility engineering. We talked to some asphalt engineers, and they basically told us, you could actually figure out where things are. It takes more time and money on the front end, but the city doesn't require, city SAWS and CPS all together don't require it. So every single entity needs to require it for a contractor to do it, because why would they spend more money if they don't have to?
Is that something that you feel like you could support?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, so much of construction, if you've gone to any sort of briefings or just have understanding of construction, so much of it is underground. I would say more than 75% of it is underground. And so if it's just repaving, all right, let's repave all day, right? Because that's the easy part. Not easy, but easier, right?
Right.
But what's happening underground is really what's preventing a lot of that movement, right? Costs are always involved in that too, but yes, 100% would support that. Whatever we can do to be more efficient. And again, that St. Mary's issue for District 8 is Prue Road, right? So Prue Road is that, if you mention Prue Road in District 8, everybody, grabs their chest and holds on to their necklace, because it's it really has just bad memories. And it's a great road now. And it was actually coming along as I was campaigning. I would see the right side was closed 1 month, the left side, and then the sidewalks got expanded. And you saw all of it firsthand, but it's real, and neighborhoods just can't unsee any of that, right?
Just the one thing I'd add on is we don't do a great job of communicating. And so oftentimes when there are delays, just to protect, the entities themselves from getting bad media, oftentimes we don't share, okay, this is another delay, this is why. And so we're actually hosting a meeting Tuesday, June 24th in the evening for the businesses in the neighborhoods to talk about South Alamo and tell people what the rest of the construction looks like, because transparently, I didn't realize it was going to be a whole nother year after Final Four till it even got done.
Yeah.
And so, that was the first thing, because again, when I got elected, everybody told me, oh no, this is going to be done before Final Four, and it's actually going to be a year after.
Yeah.
So I want to segue based on what you just said to the VIA's Advanced Rapid Transit initiative, because I think they learned from the city's mistakes, and they've made a very strong attempt, and some of it with your encouragement, to communicate to the neighborhoods and communicate to the businesses. I think they talked about 10,000 meetings or visits or calls or face-to-face communications that they've had up and down San Pedro for the Green Line, and that runs right through the heart of District 1. So tell me how you feel now about the Advanced Rapid Transit initiative.
Look, public transit is incredibly important, and I don't think anyone would argue that it's not. It's expensive. The construction might be challenging. Folks are nervous about what it's going to do for traffic and for their neighborhoods in terms of how many people are coming through their neighborhoods. But at the same time, we have to ensure that we're building a San Antonio for all of our residents. And getting to work in an efficient way is important. And we did the groundbreaking a couple of weeks ago, and previous Councilmember Ray Saldana was there because he was one of the biggest champions, he would ride to work and using VIA and talk about how hard it was. And so if we really want to create an equitable San Antonio, we have to include public transit. So all that being said, we can do it with community engagement and communication and making sure we're trying everything that we can to minimize the disruption to our existing families and neighborhoods. So I loved that they went door to door and canvassed from San Pedro to Blanco. We had asked them to do that. San Pedro to Blanco, actually all the way to McCullough too, just talking to all the residents, leaving door hangers, telling them what ART was. And that happened last fall, actually, so the fall of 2024. And they're going to continue doing that. I've asked them to do a VR, like a virtual reality image of what it's going to look like, so that residents can see and feel what it might be to be driving alongside of it. And then additionally, there's going to be a lot of streetlight and sidewalk improvements that are necessary. But we were just meeting with VIA a couple weeks ago, and one of the other candidates that actually ran in my race really wanted to push an advisory board for the construction. And so we're actually thinking about what would it look like to do a TERS, which is a tax increment reinvestment zone for the area, to try to reinvest back into the sidewalks that connect to VIA, or some ADUs to help, make homes more accessible for families that are living there. So that's an idea that's come up that we're going to continue to explore.
And the Advanced Rapid Transit Line, Evalise, is, the Green Line goes north and south. Yeah. The Silver Line, which will come after the Green Line, goes east and west.
That was past when I was in the mayor's office. So yes, very familiar.
Yeah, well, I was just leading up to the fact that those two lines don't really intersect in District 8. Yeah. So what's your take on the line? I
mean, it's always just making sure. I think it's a great idea. I'm glad that it's moved forward. And residents, again, as long as they are satisfied with what that looks like, that'll be a check for me. So in District 8, we don't really have those big lines going through, but we do have these long stretches of road as well, right? We are along I-10, so it's Callahan, Medical, Wurzbach, Huebner Road, Northwest Military runs through District 8. And so there's a lot of opportunities there for us as well. We have a pretty large hub. VIA has one near the medical center. Making sure that these ARTs and any of the lines that connect to outside of that run through those large employer right? Those large workplaces like USAA, like Valero, UTSA, the medical center, right? I think District 8 is a great place for pilot programs when we talk about all this stuff because, we can really start something quickly. Let's see how many routes we have coming out of USAA, how many routes we have coming out of the medical center. Where do those connect to most frequently? Where do we see ridership go up? At what time? There's peak times for all of this. It's not all day, every day, so...
And I know that when it comes to the medical center, a lot of the employees who work there do not live in that neighborhood.
Yeah. There's a good amount that do, for sure. I was knocking on doors and so met a lot of them, right? And they're all in the medical field. You've got close to 100,000 jobs just in the medical field in District 8. So, yeah, there's a lot of folks that do live in District 8, but the ones who don't, to your point, just how do we get them to work more efficiently? And it's not that they have the option not to use their car, right? If they have cars, we all have cars. We're from Texas and we have them. But if there was an option not to use it on some days, I think that would be a good option.
So it would. All right, I want to move over to Project Marvel because I think there may be a little bit of disconnect. People are hearing about a $4 billion development, and I think that's leading voters to think they're going to go into the voting booth and see a $4 billion tax increase, which is not the case. Right. The land bridge that's been talked about is a $300 million project, but that is 100% dependent upon a federal grant. So if the federal grant doesn't come, the land bridge doesn't get built. So when you look at the various pieces and you break it down, so Evalise, I'll start with you. When you were in the mayor's office, you had big picture vision. You had to look at the whole city. Yeah. But what are you hearing from your constituents about Project Marvel?
really it's about what exactly is encompassed, right, in that project. And for me on the campaign, I got that question quite a bit, and I always started with, you will not see the words Project Marvel on the ballot.
Right.
So just let's get that out of our heads. And I would always find like a rectangle or a piece of paper at the meet and greet I was at to just show them, this is Project Marvel. There's a number of funding mechanisms being talked about. What goes back to the voters, what goes to the taxpayers to vote on, to click that button for, are a venue tax and bonds, right? The other funding mechanisms are, come in ways. So for me, it was about explaining what it was and what it wasn't. And I think for the folks that I was talking to residents in District 8, that's important to them, right? They're not as close to downtown as other districts, but what happens downtown affects District 8, right? And what happens in District 8 affects downtown. And so for me, for residents, it was more about just understanding the project in general, right? I happened to sit in on a town hall that Manny had.
Councilman
Pelaez had probably 3 or 4 months ago. It was a great town hall, a number of people there. I know that the city is going back out this week. I think they started, or next week. So that's important, right? Just getting residents as much information about this project, and more so about what it isn't, is important.
So I think the funding mechanisms you were talking about, the venue tax, SOOK, would be a county venue tax, and on the city side would be a bond to pay for infrastructure, sidewalks, parking garages, whatever would be required in that region. And to your point, I think the tax increment reinvestment zone, the TERS, would help pay for some of the construction of some of the other things. And then you have the convention center,
PSC.
the state portion of the convention center tax. What are you hearing from District 1 residents?
So what I've heard is that community was engaged too late, and I don't disagree. I've been telling Eric and the team that when we got our first briefing in November, it should have been layered with a community engagement plan. With such a big project, we should have gone out and started asking for input immediately. I think we fell into, me included, like there's not a lot of information. It's super loosey-goosey. There's no numbers yet. This is a big idea, but we could have started getting input on the big idea without numbers. And so I'm excited for this community engagement. It feels a little bit tight in terms of timeline because it has to be, but we're engaged. We're telling all of our residents to go out and participate because I think this will be a miss if we truly don't have a community benefits agreement where the community gets anything out of it or doesn't get anything out of it. And so I say when we were at Final Four and during all of the events, and there was so much free activation happening in and around the convention center, at Civic Park, all around Hemisphere, it was incredible to see the number of San Antonio residents that got to come out and enjoy some of this awesome experience for free. And so we have to figure out how we can recreate those kinds of opportunities. And what is it that the community really wants? Is it more green space? Is it more a big screen to watch the games when you can't, go to a Spurs game? And we have to ask those questions and synthesize that to create a community benefits agreement that reflects their needs. For example, my neighborhoods down there, these sidewalks better extend all the way through Lavaca and King William too, because if we really want a walkable area, all of that area needs to be walkable.
So to your point, I saw a TV news interview with 2 young women in their 20s who did not have tickets to go to any of the Final Four games, but they drove here from Houston just to feel a part of all of the activity that was happening.
Yeah.
The free concerts, all the other events that were happening.
The screens. David Robinson Sr. was out there at some of the activation events. Manu was out there handing out basketballs to kids and playing the games that they had set up. It was incredible.
So, and you mentioned the timeline. Let's talk about the timeline because I believe by August is when city and county have to vote to put something on the November ballot.
Right.
Then you vote on the budget. September is when you start having your community input is probably already starting to happen now with budget. September, October is when you vote on budget?
September.
Yeah.
Okay.
September.
And then November will be this election
Yeah.
For this item. So you have a kind of
Big stuff happening.
a little bit of a lull maybe right now, and then all of a sudden it's you're moving 100 miles an hour.
I'm not feeling a lull, Ellie.
Yeah, no. Yeah, I don't feel that at all.
Well, and I guess that goes back to our point about council doesn't meet in July. So to the outsiders, it may look like there's a lull, but you're still meeting. You're still getting briefings on the budget and a host of other things that are happening.
Yeah.
And if you're listening, the dates for District 1, at least for the Marvel discussion, are going to be July 8th and 9th. And you can actually go to any session in case you can't.
I think mine are 8th and 9th also. Yeah. District 8 is also July 8th and 9th. It's a 2-day work session, essentially, that one of the consultants is putting together. So they're going out on the road.
So as a newly elected council member, I'm sure you have a lot of questions. You have an opportunity with an incumbent sitting next to you at this moment. What question do you have of Councilwoman Kaur?
I guess I would, my question would be, what do you look forward to going from a 2-year term to now a 4-year term, right? Because you've had experience with both, and I will not have that experience. And so,
you're very
what
lucky.
is that? Yeah.
Honestly, the saying that you're with a 2-year term that you're campaigning for basically 6 months of it, so it's really only, and then the first 6 months you're lucky, you have had experience. I always say Elise already knows how the system works. I was learning so much, like drinking from a fire hose the first 6 months. So I felt like I really only had a year to get anything done before I was already being questioned about what I got done. So I think the 4-year term really enables, especially people that have no experience in working for the city or working as a part of the council aid group, really understand deeply how things work and then determine exactly where they're going to focus policy impact on. And even just building a team, right? We have the amazing benefit of getting to be able to hire 9 staff members, up to 9. And we need them for constituent casework, for policy support, for communications, et cetera. But building that right team that gels, that was the thing that came up a lot for me this election. It took me a little bit. But it's because if you think about a startup, no startup starts from ground immediately with all the right staff and the right folks. So I think the new folks are going to have a really good opportunity to be able to take their time building the right team. And that would be my one thing, like take your time building the right team, make sure people know exactly what they're signing up for and who they're signing up for.
Yeah, with the startups, you're flying the plane as you're learning how to build it.
Exactly. Exactly.
Do you have a question of this newly elected Councilwoman Meza Gonzalez?
Yeah, so your background is so fascinating in that you come from this. Like I feel like this was your family's legacy, and there's so much that's on your shoulders. And then you got to work from in the mayor's office, and now you're as a District 8 representative. How do you think you're going to shift from, going from citywide in the mayor's office to now being the District 8 councilwoman, if you are at all?
Yeah. No, thank you. That's great. I think it's just about kind of putting my head down in District 8, almost like how we campaigned. That's all we talked about, lived, breathe, 8, District 8. And so that's my plan. But always, always, always have an eye on citywide issues because it impacts everyone. And so, just balancing that, learning how to balance that. And District 8, I think, is just too important, right, as a district for our entire city. And so that's helpful and where it is as a district and what it all encompasses. And so, I will do both.
I thought about your mom when you were
thank you.
being sworn in.
It was beautiful remarks.
Oh, thank you very much.
Yeah, I know she would have been proud.
Yeah, absolutely.
Last question, I guess. Just any final thoughts about your terms ahead? What makes you nervous? What are you worried about? How do you prioritize the fire hose?
Yeah, for me, it's about every day, right, is a new day, and taking it one day at a time, but with an eye on what's ahead of us. I mean, you mentioned all the meetings that we have, the big votes that we have coming up, and so it's almost like campaign mode in a sense, and any big idea that we have coming up at the city or in District 8, we've got to go back to the voters, back to the residents, make sure that they know about it. So we knock on doors just like we did when we were running. Door hangers are still valuable in this workspace. And so that's important to me. And that's also important to residents. I think the residents that are voting for us are also excited to see a council who has the energy and is creative with how they're receiving this information. I think they're open to it. They're here for it. And so also we have a budget deficit that we need to be as creative as possible to help fill in those holes, making sure that I believe that it is a team effort. And when I say team, it's our city, it's our county, it's our nonprofits. Everybody has to be on the same page because there's too much at stake as a community for anything to get left out.
So, Silk, you've been through this in your first 2-year term. What are you looking forward to in the next 4 years?
Honestly, I'm super excited that we have 7 of 11 women on the dais. I think that's really exciting to be able to be a part of that and collaborate to work on our biggest issues. So one thing our office learned was we got to make sure we have our priorities and that we're focused on those priorities. So you're not going to be shocked by the first one, but infrastructure is our number one priority. It's going to continue to stay that way. The second one is housing, right? So we really need to focus on how do we get more creative on housing and ensuring that we're addressing major minor home rehab, keeping people in their homes, and continue building stock at all AMI levels. Right? And then the third one is public safety, right? And we talked about stray and loose dogs already, and trying to ensure that we're addressing animal care and streetlights. That's a big challenge that we still have to keep working to address. And so all of that coming into a deficit is challenging. And we didn't talk a lot today about our unhoused population, but we're going to be running out of some federal government money at the end of this year for some of the shelters that we've been running for them. And that's going to be a big focus on how do we make sure we keep those going.
I think we could do an entire episode just on that topic and then another episode on the housing issue.
Yes. Yeah.
So I thank you, too, for coming in, Councilwoman Kaur, Councilwoman Meza Gonzalez. I look forward to having you back to talk about those other issues.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.